Thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm conscious that I stand between you and lunch, and the journey's far and wide on a Friday afternoon. But this is the first opportunity I've had to publicly thank Nuffield, and to acknowledge, as I think all Nuffield scholars do, what a humbling experience it is, and how warmly I feel I've been welcomed into the Nuffield community. Over the years, I spent 30 or more years working in the agri-food supply chain, primarily as an academic. I've presented to Nuffield groups at various times, but never have I got this close, and never have I been part of the Nuffield community. So it is a privilege. I do feel humble, and those presentations were amazing. I was at the CLA conference yesterday, so I missed those fantastic presentations. All I can think is, if my lecture next summer, July, is anything like as engaging as the presentations that you've had this morning, then I'll be delighted. I'm not, you'd be pleased to know, as you're thinking about those insects you got for lunch and how far you've got to get home, I'm not going to give my lecture. I've been asked to whet the appetite and give you an introduction. So that's what I'm going to do. Is that going to work? If it's not, then perhaps you can help me. Here we go. So I just thought, by way of introduction, I'll tell you what I've been doing, and I'll tell you where I've got to in my assessment of the current state of play. So I am an academic, and I think what makes the Nuffield lectureship different, or at least the positioning in the portfolio of what it is that Nuffield does, is that it's a mechanism for reaching out to academia. I'm not a practitioner. Nuffield scholars are practitioners who, for a period of their lives, become researchers as they travel the world talking to and meeting with academics and practitioners in other parts of the world. And as I was putting together this taster, I thought to myself, or I reminded myself, reflected on, so why did I accept this challenge? And here we go. So I'm probably getting towards the end of my shelf life now, and I spent the last 25 years now focusing on supermarket supply chains and the relationships of organisations in those supply chains, and for the last 15 years, some of you will know, capturing that Tesco club card data, wrapping it up and giving it away for free to hundreds and hundreds of small businesses, many of whom are farmers, to help them understand better what's going on in supermarket supply chains. And then when Chris alerted me to this opportunity, it drew my attention to the fact that not only am I coming towards the end of my academic career, but the subject matter in which I've been focusing on, and the distribution channel which was part of that maybe has a limited shelf life too. So this work that I've been doing around supermarket supply chains starting to look dated, as, at least if we're going to believe what we're told, people are shifting in their droves and likely to continue to do so to buying through alternative distribution channels, in which case insights from alternative sources will become so much more valuable. So if you follow that, I sense that for many Nuffield scholars, we feel very comfortable that we've mastered some part of our business, in your case on the farm, but we feel intrigued and challenged about some new areas of activity that are important to us personally or important to the industry as a whole. And that's where I fit with e-commerce. So I came to this with somebody who's researched the food industry and the retail supply chain for many, 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 many years. I came to this not as an expert in e-commerce. So what did I do? I've been spending a lot of my time reading, establishing what the extant knowledge about this phenomena is. A large part of that, not as much as I would like, and I sincerely hope that the one outcome from my Nuffield scholarship will be a contribution to the academic literature, because for all that you may argue, and I acknowledge we fail to translate so much of our academic research into the real world, it's still a really important signpost to what the future might hold. But where we are right now is a phenomena that academics are actually catching up on, trying to understand. So the academic literature is relatively limited, which means I spend a lot of my time. Planet Retail has become my Bible. It's an incredible resource. It's also incredibly expensive, so I'm lucky that the University of East Anglia invests in a subscription. If any of you are interested in discovering anything at all about any retailer anywhere on the planet, then as part of the family, talk to me, because I can give you some insight that comes from that resource that otherwise you would be denied. But there are growing numbers of resources that you can access that I've been following. And then, of course, like all Nuffield scholars, I've been on this incredible journey of discovery. My focus and research in the UK market will continue until probably the week before the presentation. This is a phenomenon that's changing at such a pace. The minute I stop, my research is going to become dated. But I can't keep going around the world, finding out what's happening in other parts of the world. And why did I go to where I went? So the USA, that's East Coast and West Coast fundamentally, is where all the action is. So I went to New York, visited a bunch of integrators identified at the bottom, and in California. But I also went to Florida and Arizona, because there I have fellow researchers trying to understand this phenomena, and particularly researchers whose home is in agriculture, so who are not purely interested in what's happening with Walmart and Amazon and Tesco and Ocado, but just thinking about what this means upstream. I went to Mexico, where I've developed a relationship with some excellent researchers in the province about 100 kilometers south of Mexico City, where Walmart are exploring their entry into e-commerce in South America through developing relationships with numerous independent stores, and researchers at that institution are conducting some action research in partnership with them. Of course, I've been to New Zealand and Australia, met some incredible people in Melbourne, so the head of Amazon in Australia, and the head of his position was called the head of disruptive technologies for Coles supermarkets in Australia. So these are incumbents, which contrast these companies that I'd never heard of on the right-hand side. These are all companies actively engaged in targeting the third center of the universe, because it's kind of New York, Tokyo, and London, where the major players are focusing their experiments. Industry is still experimenting in this space, and London is one of those areas where much research is ongoing. Indeed, can you believe industry perceives the UK as a mature market for grocery e-commerce, where it seems to me we've barely started the journey. I still have one more big trip to go, which will be to Asia in the spring. February, I should be visiting Japan, China, and South Korea. Why did I leave the biggest market to the end, you might ask? To which I respond, well, I think, as I'll share with you in a second, the characteristics and experiences, particularly in China and South Korea, are so different from what we have in the UK. I'm sure I will learn many things that I didn't expect to learn, because that's what you do with these things. But I don't believe that we're going to be picking models directly out of Beijing and dropping them into Bradford. So, there we go. So what have I learned so far? And I'm running out of time. I'm not going to give you the lecture. I'm simply trying to whet your palates. So here's a few things. And I see similarities with e-commerce, with other issues in the agri-food sector. Big data springs to mind, and the use of big data on farm. If you believe what you read, we've got drones delivering information that's integrated seamlessly through farm software programs, data captured on autonomously driven machines, that in reality, you all know, isn't happening. The potential exists, the reality is something very different. And it feels to me the very same or very similar when it comes to e-commerce. So the title is The Impact of the E-commerce Revolution. Chris, I'm going to say to you, at the moment, I believe this is evolution, not revolution. So my first kind of discovery, because I was very excited about all the incredible things I was going to discover. There's loads of incredible things that are possible, and loads of incredible things that are in test. But we should beware the hype. Grocery e-commerce continues to be at the early stages of its growth. That's not a bad thing. It's not too late for farmers to jump on the train. That was a tremendous, I love that statement, farmers need to be at the table, not on the table. And that's so true of so many of these opportunities, and grocery e-commerce is absolutely one of them. I think in almost all of my conversations, they are on the table as a problem that we need to solve, and one that we're currently not really that bothered about, because all the noise around this is at the point of purchase. And Asia is a very special place. They didn't have 30 years of investment in bricks and mortar and the infrastructure that is a barrier, if you like, or a major hurdle in the way we transition into e-commerce in the UK. They were able to jump time. They were able to jump directly into the model that they're in. Connectivity, you're born with an iPhone attached to your palm, I think, in China these days, and they're way ahead of us in terms of technology adoption. They have much lower costs of labour. Labour is a major, major barrier to making this happen. And of course, they have the scale and the density of population that leaves us paling into significance. So beware the hype. Second thing I've discovered is that it really is bricks and clicks, not bricks, 2 clicks. We are not abandoning supermarkets to start buying online. It is the coming together of these two things where all the action is. So the retail industry is focused almost exclusively on what they refer to as omni-channel. Yep, so the fact that more and more people are buying stuff, and particularly food, through multiple distribution channels, and therefore their task is to seamlessly bring those different channels together. That remains the goal. The head of Amazon in Australia told me, we're not there yet. We will get there, can't tell you when, but we're not there yet. And an interesting insight from them, if it's not in the warehouse, then we won't allow shoppers to see it, because we're making incredible promises about delivery within an hour. We're not going to make promises that we can't keep, because this is all about service. So strategic alliances and acquisitions are speeding up the process. They're happening all over the place, but they also raise the stakes. And the reality is, I perceive, there aren't very many people making any money out of this so far. But they believe there's a big, 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 big gain coming. New entrants, the integrators, are the really interesting ones, disrupting the status quo. I had images in my mind of tugboats and cruisers. You have these huge giants that are trying to take the big, big pieces of the cake, and you've got these little minnows, these disruptors, completely different beasts. They have no baggage in agri-food. They have no knowledge of agri-food. They're mathematicians, they're computer scientists. The barriers to entry are very, very low. How much space do you need to stock 1,000 products in the middle of London, next to all the chimney pots? Not very much. You then use your artificial intelligence to understand so much better than Tesco who's buying what, when, how often, and how I can make sure they come back for more. The role of behavioural data, therefore, is growing exponentially, and that's both an opportunity and a threat as we move upstream. Convenience and service are the major consumer drivers. Word of warning, therefore, it's all about convenience, it's all about value. As I was telling the people at the CLA yesterday, consumers don't care anything like as much about the things we think they do in reality. If we wait for them to work out what they could do if they learned all this stuff that we're doing on the farm, then it could be a long time coming. So the growth of e-commerce is, I think, following a similar pattern to the growth of supermarkets back in the 70s and 80s. First stage is same value, better service. Doing what the incumbents already do, So all the things that you must have from Tesco, we'll deliver those to you in an hour at a fraction of the cost, because we cut out the middleman, we haven't got the capital investment, we can deliver more for less. But we don't want to just do what Tesco do, we want to do two different things. So reaching out to the artisanal producers, eventually now I start to turn the lens, is a real opportunity. But guess what? We've now got incredibly valuable insight into those artisanal products that find their way into these new entrants who are supplying products directly to the offices, directly to the homes, pick up on, and if they fail, sorry, you're out of here. Because we can't afford to carry products that simply do not sell. That's not the way it's worked in retail. It takes you 6 months to get in, it takes you 3 months to work out why you shouldn't be there in the first place, and then another 2 weeks before you're dumped. And that's been happening for many, many years in the conventional system. There is a growing interest. I discovered community-supported agriculture. I'm not ashamed to say I'd never heard of it, but that's a fundamental driver both in the East Coast and the West Coast of the USA, and has, I think, real synergies with the growing interest of food hubs. So this is direct to consumer, where the farmers are in much more control, building bridges and breaking down barriers. Generation Z, that's the young guys and girls that were born post-2000, I think they are the key to deeper and wider digital integration. The millennials, apparently, now they've got kids and worked out what it's like to not have any money anymore, aren't actually driving so much of this as we thought they were. It's the new generation of younger consumers that we need to engage with. The digital self, trust and transparency. Gen Z is where it's at, not the millennials. Short term, so finally, yes, he's telling me to stop. I have just 2 more slides, this is it. Short term, very little impact upstream. Why? We need to engage early to learn the lessons, test the market, and get some skin in the game. We need to be at the table, not on the table. E-commerce is a whole new world, and the worry is that farmers will think, I just need to add a website, and I need to add an option to deliver to home, and that'll be it. Look at the table. It's stark. Actively look at new brands. 39% half of what people do in store. Purchase influenced by packaging and what they see. 16 versus 37. Considering buying a brand not usually purchased, something new. 1 in 5 as opposed to over half. So the idea that this is some nirvana that's going to rescue us, think again. We need fundamental investment in new ways of understanding how people purchase and behave in an online environment, and then invest in our systems accordingly. There are significant opportunities. D2C is a good fit for entrepreneurial farmers, but it's that wretched C word. It's been there for the last 30 years and continues to come up over and over and over and over again. How many farmers think they can do it all by themselves? They've got this great little business growing X, Y, and Z. We'll just put it online. It's not going to work. So product range matters at least as much, if not more, than the product itself. It's all about convenience. I don't want to be going to 50,000 websites to fill my basket. I want one. Need to build partnerships with the disruptive new entrants. I don't see much of that happening. Who recognize the value in differentiation and have the capacity to fill the gaps that farmers don't currently have. There's one opportunity that's been overlooked, I think, which I intend to research and share the outcomes from which of the research in my lecture, and that's to make more of existing underutilized capacity in storage and distribution, working with independents, because independents are being squeezed out of this. So between them, Amazon and Tesco are kicking them into touch, which means large parts of our country and our communities will be without their local grocer. And guess what? That grocer is potentially a critical hub through which farmers can gain their first step into the world of e-commerce. I'm so sorry for going on for too long. Mike is shaking his head at me. Save the date if you find this remotely interesting, and I'd be really happy to talk to any of you over lunch. Thank you.